Good morning, church. I'm excited to get into 3 John, the last of our John series, and then we'll be moving on to Jude. But this is a really topical one for any time in the church. And the title really is simply this: No Personality Conflicts. You know, family, and that's what church is, you think about it, will have conflict. If you're going to have conflict in your biological families, as small as they are, then you're certainly going to have conflict in your spiritual family. And the church is a fairly large organization, and in actual fact, it's enormous when you think about it. And potentially there are millions of relationships you can have, especially now we have the internet and we have access to videos we can watch and sermons and all sorts of things. So if you've been through some tension lately or had a few bumps, it shouldn't really surprise you, considering we're a family full of selfish people who are trying to be like Christ but aren't actually like Christ. So some friction is obviously inevitable because of poor communication. Most of us aren't brought up really being able to learn how to have great communication skills from our parents. Why? Because they don't have good communication skills. Sadly, some of us come from broken families, which shows you just how poor their communication is. But there's also another kind of friction, which is much more insidious and harmful inside a church. The Bible calls it a dissension or a faction in Galatians 5:20, and these are both sins that will actually lead you to hell. Dissension is disagreement that leads to discord. And then a faction is a small group dissenting within a large one. So a small group that disagrees within the church, that disagrees with the rest of the church or the leadership. A clique, as it were. These always result directly from sin. And this is the situation in 3 John that John addresses. It's very, very serious, and it must be dealt with swiftly. So welcome to the world of Demetrius and Diophretes. This is also a personal letter as opposed to some of the other letters. So in 3 John verse 1, it says, "The elder to my dear friend Gaius, whom I love in the truth." And it's a really short letter, which is of typical length and appears short in the New Testament because the others had much more to deal with being addressed to churches. So you think about it. How often do you receive a personal letter that is like 15 or 20 pages long? You know, most emails are like, you sort of read them and they're just about that long, a short letter. This is what it was really like. And also, when you think about it, writing a letter in the first century was a far bigger thing. Why? Well, they didn't have the postal service we had. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have text. They didn't have all of that. They had to have ink, which was a compound made of charcoal and vegetable gum. It wasn't that common. Papyrus was rolled up like a scroll on a single leaf that have had to have contained 2 or 3 John. In other words, these were not common articles that every single person had. And then also, the mention of the truth here is in line with the fundamental problem. In other words, opinions doesn't equal truth. The struggle is between truth and falsehood, good and evil, light and darkness. Gaius is on the side of truth, and in fact, if it is possible to have a friendship as God intended, that can only be had when 2 people have the truth. So the way that we remain unified is that we remove our opinion and we go, in our relationship, we're going to focus on the truth. And where do we find that? We find that in God's word. And that's what unifies us. Opinions very often divide us, if not always. This is why the fellowship of disciples of Christ doesn't imitate outsiders, worldly relationships not built on truth. And darkness is afraid of this. And this is why, you know, even in John 3:19, it says, "This is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people love darkness instead of light, because their deeds were evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light, and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light, so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done may be done in the sight of God." So there is always a big conflict between those that have the truth and those that are in darkness. Because darkness people, they don't want to be open. They don't want to have the truth laid before them. Whereas Christians, we speak the truth in love. We're not afraid of telling the truth, nor hearing the truth, because our life is about pleasing God, not trying to look good in front of others. So point 1, we need to take care of each other. So 3 John 2 says, "Dear friend, I pray that you may enjoy good health and that all may go well with you, even as your soul is getting along well." So John's getting on in life here, and perhaps Gaius is as well. I know, like John, there are things that went wrong with him physically as you get older. Even now at 53, my knees give me a little bit of trouble, and it's not going to get better, it's only going to get worse. At any rate, what we do see in this friendship is that John is concerned about Gaius's health. Physical health and spiritual health are both important things, and both are legitimate concerns when it comes to prayer. We should be praying for our spiritual health, but also our physical health. I know I'm becoming more and more conscious of this as I get older, because I want to preach the gospel for as long as I can. Some people stress spirituality to the point of neglect physically. Sacrifice is definitely part of following Christ, but what good is it if we run ourselves into the ground? Jesus saw the need for balance. In Mark 6:31 it says, "Then because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, 'Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest.'" So Jesus took his disciples away for a retreat because it can be really challenging with the schedule, with everybody trying to get a piece of you as a trainee apostle. There's a balance. At the other extreme, there are those who talk about the spiritual, but whose first love is physical comfort and health. Denying is not a way of life. They find it challenging to be in a relationship with God where they're constantly called to denial. Others are literally more worried about how they look physically with biceps than they are spiritually. I remember preaching the Brothers one night and I said, "What's on your Facebook page?" Some of you were there trying to expose your muscles on the Facebook page. And then that night, a couple of brothers went and changed their Facebook page because they realized they had been called out. Believe me, God is not impressed with how big your bicep is. Yes, you should be healthy, but spending time down the gym the whole time where you potentially have a lot of time to lust rather than really, spending time with God. And here's a challenge. Do you spend more time in the gym than reading your Bible and praying every week? If you do, you have your priorities wrong. Additionally, some disciples seem to think that Jesus would disapprove of certain foods like meat or alcohol. And yet there are so many scriptures in the Bible. Jesus turned water into wine. He asked, Timothy, hey, Paul's saying to Timothy, take a little red wine. Or eating meat, eating all types of food. I really appreciate Sarah, who's on staff. She's somebody that doesn't eat meat. But she never makes it an issue. She never makes herself a special case. She doesn't try and convert everybody to becoming a vegetarian or a vegan. It's just her personal conviction. And we've got to be really careful. We may have personal convictions, but we can't then force them on other people. So what can be recommended for all disciples, regardless of culture? Well, definitely even the government would say, have you got your 20 minutes in or your 30 minutes in? Have you done exercise? Are you able to go and do things? I really appreciate my wife. She's a great example of this. Getting up at 5 o'clock, 3 mornings a week, going and working out with all of her friends down the beach in Coogee Chicks. It's good to keep healthy so that we could go on for as long as possible. And I'm really conscious of this. Every year I try and do a marathon or something like that. And it's not easy, but I am conscious of the fact that, we need to look after ourselves. Even other areas specifically like with teeth, etc. I know recently we've helped Fung just get her teeth done and Megan get her teeth done. We don't want to be in pain so that we're not focusing on the ministry. Getting a good night's sleep. Some people love to stay up to 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning and then get up late. The truth of it is we should be in sync with one another. Husbands and wives should be in sync with one another, getting up together and having quiet times, going to bed together. It shouldn't be that we should have singles households where people are going to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and getting up at 10 and some getting up at 6. That's not unified. We should all go to bed together and get up together like a family. So is just health advisory? Not at all. We've got to keep in context here of the false doctrine. So the real false doctrine here is Gnosticism, which you would think they talked about how the body was either not physical of Jesus or you could do whatever you wanted with your body. So in tune with John, 1 John and 2 John, we see that John is focusing on the balance here. No, we can't go out and sin and do whatever we want with our body, but we do have to look after our bodies so we can preach the gospel. And he's saying this to his friend. He's going, I pray your health is good. And as leaders, we need to have great health so we can set the example to other people. But also, you see this love in this relationship between Gaius and John. Our relationship should bring us joy. In 3 John 3, it says, it gave me great joy to have some brothers come and tell me about your faithfulness to the truth and how you continue to walk in the truth. I've no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth. This reminds us of 2 John 4. Continuing to walk in the truth here means not just being faithful, but taking a stand amid false heresies. We need to value our relationships in the kingdom. Every faithful disciple. When I go to conferences around the world and I see other Christians and maybe I had the privilege of converting or being in the ministry with in England or in America or wherever it is, I'm just fired up that they're faithful. 1 year they may go, I'm a Bible talk leader this year. Another year, I'm not a Bible talk leader. Next year, I'm in the ministry next year. All I care about is, are you here? Are you here? Are you still faithful? You're going to go through ups. You're going to go through downs. But we've really got to value the fact, it's not like there are so many Christians in the world, real Christians, that we can pick and choose. There are so few of us when you think about it. I think about just making sure this week that maybe there's some people that you owe a bit of your salvation to. People who you sort of feel like, I really should be in better touch with that person back in America. Or better in touch with our friends like Chi or whatever, the people over in Hong Kong. Take the time to call them. Take the time to appreciate them. I appreciate, on Facebook, it always comes up with, hey, it's this person's birthday, it's this person's birthday. It's a great reminder, just a good reminder to call people. We've got to value the weak people in the church as well, not get annoyed with them. The Bible says in Corinthians that the weak are indispensable. Why? Well, they teach us to love. But also remember that you will be weak at some time. My friend Chris Kloberg, I love this quote. He says, be kind to the people on the way up because you're the same people they're going to pass on when you come on the way down. And it's about valuing people. Let me challenge you. Write down 5 people today that are overdue a telephone call, an email, or a Skype call that you need to contact. And contact them today or throughout this week. Encourage them, phone them up just to say, hey, I just want to say, how are you? And then also, when it comes to relationships, we need to meet each other's financial needs. In 3 John 5, it says, dear friend, you are faithful in what you are doing for the brothers, even though they are strangers to you. They have told the church about your love. You will do well to send them on their way in a manner worthy of God. It was for the sake of the name that they went out, receiving no help from the pagans. Gaius is a mature and solid Christian. His love extends even to those he does not know personally. So here, you've got people who were from another ministry, and he's being encouraged, look after them when they're with you. This is what we do with special missions contribution every year. We send money out to people that possibly we don't know. I know when we joined the movement again, our first special missions from Brisbane was sent out to Sao Paulo, Brazil, as it was planted. Now we've had the privilege to go over there, and I think we sent $5,000 or whatever 5 years ago when we had a good job. And we got to meet the fruit of some of our special contribution. But this is what we need to do even now, while there is a special contribution being raised. We need to understand we need to look at our finances. We need to not overspend. We need to start saving for special missions next year. We're going to be sending out the Brisbane, our second church in Sydney, sending out the Brisbane church next year. So we need to make sure we have that money ready to go and support that mission team. And of course the name here refers to Jesus Christ, who is God. Also, he's talking about the extent of just love for one another. And the fact that we should always practice hospitality. In 3 John 8, it says, we ought therefore to show hospitality to such men, so that we may work together for the truth. Hospitality in the Old Testament and the New Testament is valued highly. It's talked about highly. Definitely in Jesus' day and Jewish times, inns were places of ill repute. They weren't very hygienic. And therefore, we really see that the Christians would open up their homes to people, whether they knew them or not, of the same faith. So should we be. But let me challenge you. How do you do with hospitality? When was the last time you had a date at your house? How are your family times? Do they happen every week? I know sometimes people they can be in a household and they can arrange family times where they get with lots of other groups. And so what happens is they actually start having bad relationships at home because they actually don't have time with the people at home. Kerry and I, with our family, we get together as a family every Sunday night. We bring the family in, we talk about different issues, and then we also practice hospitality. So on Sunday in the afternoon, we have people around that don't live in our house. We have games, etc. And then on Sunday night, Luke, Kerry, myself, and my daughter comes home with her boyfriend, and we have a time where we talk as a family and we enjoy our time. It's not either or, you need both. I think about when was the last time you had a friend over just to stay at your house? When was the last time you washed your sheets and gave your bed up for another brother or another sister who came over? You made them breakfast. You had a quiet time together. Let me talk to the marrieds. Marrieds, just because you're married, have you stopped being hospitable? You're like, well, I'm a young married. I don't want anybody coming into our space. It should be the opposite. You should be more hospitable right now. You know, I always appreciate Kerry so much in this area. We have people over all the time. She never complains. She always keeps the house clean. She always provides food for them. And she never ever complains that, hey, the more people we have over, the more that eats into her financial budget as a mother and as a wife. She's like, I will provide for these people. My second point is identify the bad and focus on the good. Excuse me, my voice is going. Cup of tea. There you go. Identify the bad and focus on the good. John 3:9 says, I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to be first, will have nothing to do with us. So if I come, I will call attention to what he is doing, gossiping maliciously about us. Not satisfied with that, he refuses to welcome the brothers. He also stops those who want to do so and puts them out of the church. So here, John is really calling out sin of an individual. John had already written to the church, but his letter fell on deaf ears as far as the fraction that this man was concerned. In other words, he'd already said, you need to deal with this sin in this church. You need to deal with this brother. And yet they didn't. The letter was a common apostolic tool for enforcing unity and spreading the truth and staying in touch. But this leader, Diotrephes, was a leader who enjoyed leadership too much. His selfish ambition had become full-blown. This was the same sin of Satan. He wanted to be top dog. He could not stand the concept of having competition with other people. And in the spirit of Absalom in 2 Samuel, he strove to influence others to idolize him by viewing others with a suspicious eye. He was like I'm great, those person, and let's keep those people out. This was not a case of personality conflict. It was pure egotistical arrogance. To the disciple of Jesus, incompatibility or personality conflict are transparent rationalizations for sin. You can't say, well, we just got to agree to disagree. There is no disagreement. We either follow the scriptures or we don't. Is there any relationship in your life that you might describe as a personality conflict? What role is sin playing in this situation? Sin with you and sin with them. Who can help you determining this? All sin must be called out and we must be brought to unity. This is not an unchristian case of name calling. The denomination world would react that this is neither unkind or unbiblical. This was an issue that needed to be dealt with. In the Bible, influential opponents of the truth were often named publicly as a safeguard for people of God. People needed to know if there were people in sin disrupting things. To refuse to expose them would allow their influence to increase. It would be unloving not to do so. There are certainly names throughout the Bible that even today we quote them as non-good examples. Think about Korah, Alexander, Judas, so many others that deserved condemnation. We say, hey, don't be a Judas, don't be a betrayer, don't be a Korah, don't use your emotions to promote your own position. Obviously, to mention every name from the pulpit for just some minimal fraction of sin would not help build up the church. But when those people of influence had greatly sinned and influenced others, well, that's a different matter if they remain unrepentant. Despite all this, we must focus on the good. In John 3:11 it says, "Dear friend, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. Anyone who does what is good is from God. Anyone who does what is evil has not seen good." It is completely fair to assess a person's character on the basis of his or her outward life. When will the world learn that it is ridiculous to pretend that someone's private life has no organic connection with his or her perfect life, public life? As you are at home is as you are in public, and as you are in public is as you are at home. Politicians, statesmen, teachers, counselors, church leaders must all be held to the same standard, personally and publicly. There is a set standard even at the moment in New South Wales. There is much debate over the leader of the state because of her personal life. I don't have an opinion on this or that, but people recognize that what you do in private absolutely reflects what you do in public. And as a result, it is in question. I have no opinion on the outcome because it's politics. But people understand that. We need to imitate those whose lives show the truth. 3 John 12. Demetrius is spoken well of by everyone and even by the truth itself. We also speak well of him, as you know our testimony is true. How does the truth speak? This guy's life was worth lifting up, and we should lift one another up in the gospel. He had a personal example that was sterling. How's your own example? Could anyone accuse you of corruption or even a trace of lukewarmness? In Daniel 4:6, when people came to accuse him and said they couldn't find anything, would anybody in the church look at you and go, "You know what? You lukewarm"? Would you feel comfortable asking anybody in your household or in your D group or whatever it is going, "Do you think I'm lukewarm? How do you view me as a person?" You should be asking that question rather than waiting for somebody to come to you. And if they say, "Bro, let's be honest, you don't really bring that many visitors, or you're a bit grumpy, or you're a little bit lukewarm, or this or that," you should then be convicted and go, "I'm going to deal with this sin." People already have an opinion of you before you speak or before you come into a room. The only real issue is do you know that opinion? And are you aware of it? It's that simple. Each person's life produces fruit, actions and word, and by their fruits they will know them. Matthew 7, verse 20. Thus by their fruit you will recognize them. Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles?' Then I will tell them plainly, 'I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers.'" It's interesting when you study the Bible with so many people, and even some critical Christians, and they have so many opinions. But if you then turn around to them and you go, "Well, where is the fruit of your labor for the last 5 years? Where is the church or group that you lead? Where is your great marriage? Why aren't you in leadership? Why has God not raised you up?" And it is God that raises us up and takes us down. And then you look at their life and you go, your life does not allow you to have the opinions you have. And sometimes that's the conversation we need to have with people. The contrast is obvious here. There's a broad road and a narrow road, a dominion of darkness and a kingdom of light, and there's life and there's death. God desires that we choose life. All the way back to Deuteronomy. Verse 19, it says, "This day I call the heavens and the earth as witness against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live, and that you may love the Lord your God, listen to his voice, and hold fast to him." God judges us. He goes, you need to choose. It's on you. The issue is not, does God want to love us? The issue is, do we love God? Too many people go, "God just loves everybody." He wants to, but that's not the issue. The issue is, do we love God? That should be simple enough decision for those who have crossed over from death to life. And 3 John gives us insight into the development of denominations. Considering Jesus' prayer in John 17, that a church should never have divisions in it. That's why denominations can't be true. Why? Because there's only one kingdom. There should be only one church. And this concept of, well, we're just all leading to the same place. No, we're not. John 17:20, Jesus prays, "My prayer is not for them, I pray also for those who believe in me through their message, that all of you may be one. Father, just as you are in me and I am in you, may they also be in us, that the world may believe that you have sent me. I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be one as we are one, I in them and you in me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. Then the world will know that you have sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me. Jesus says people in the church should be as close and as intimately unified as Jesus and God. So think about how hard that is just in one church. And the fact that there are many denominations totally goes against the will of God here. He said there needs to be unity so that people from outside can look at them and go, that type of unity is found nowhere else but in God's kingdom. And that's it. If you have reservations about anybody, if somebody would sit next to you at church, you go, I wish they would not sit there, then you have a problem. You have an unbiblical problem, which is you're not loving that person. I remember somebody preaching that years ago, maybe, 1992. And I remember somebody saying, is there anybody in your church that you wouldn't like to sit next to? And I still remember, there was this lady called Lorraine Williams. I thought, if she sits next to me, I won't be happy. And the fact that her name could come to my mind straight away meant I had an issue with that. I hardly ever knew the girl, but I just had a couple of interactions in the fellowship where I went, I don't know if I like that person. You know, God doesn't call us to like people. He calls us to love people. You know, this worldly mindset, is it acceptable? The more opinions, the better. Absolutely not. There is only one truth. You know, the human spirit must not be fettered by rules and authority, personal autonomy in any way, shape, or form. You know, we need to be perfectly united to be saved. And then point 3, great relationships take time. 3 John 13. I have much to write to you, but I do not want to do so with pen and ink. I hope to see you soon, and we will talk face to face. Peace to you. The friends here send their greetings. Greet the friends there by name. John said he would soon visit and bring this matter to resolution. You know, there is no substitute for actually time together. You know, hopefully this brief note that John had written would sober people up, snatch them from the fire, as it says in Jude 23. Put the fear of God that go, hey, you need to deal with this. I've already written to you. You haven't dealt with it. Now you need to deal with it. And I'm going to follow this up with a visit, and you better have it dealt with it. But John knew that dealing with a serious issue like this, a letter would not completely resolve it. He had to write it first to warn them, but he's like, I need to get in there. Bringing people to complete unity is going to take quality and quantity time. You know, I was just dealing with a marriage situation today, and you know, the brother phoned me, then the sister phoned me, then the brother phoned me, and then tonight we're going to get a Skype call together. It takes that much time just to resolve a tiny little bump. But we are determined to make sure that they go to bed unified. How great are you at bringing unity? How great are you at mending relationships? How are your friendships? Do you eagerly want to spend time with people? You know, I'm helping different people. I just look through their schedule and I go, you know what? The thing that's really disturbing about the schedule is, it's just about you. Where are all the Christians? So I was talking to James this morning. He's recording me now. And I said, you know, how's your day been? He said, well, it's been great. We spoke to Samoa at 9 o'clock, to Scotty and Jenna. And then at 10:30, we spoke to Auckland, Tegan and Sean. And then at 12, we spoke to our friends, the Antelons in America. And then at 1:30, we spoke to Lan and Chi over in Hong Kong. And then I'm here preaching. And then we're meeting people in town. Then we're going to midweek. Your life should be full. I know many of us would love to be in the ministry to have that sort of time. But some of us do have that time because we're not working. And yet we don't fill our lives up with people. It's just down to selfishness. You know, I think about some people that are great at relationships. I think Megan has great relationships. You go into a house, it's happy, it's unified. Even with her being ill, everybody's, you know, gathering around her. But when she's not, then there's just unity there. You walk in the house, there's people ready to give you, I think on Sundays, it's Beth who makes us cupcakes and muffins, and then Sybil makes us coffee, and there's just a real unity, and you can feel it. Everybody's busy cleaning up. Everybody's busy making things ready for people. And as a result, when people come into the Bible talk or come into church, that's the sort of spirit they have, and then you see the visitors doing exactly the same. How are your relationships at home? You know, I love our staff. It's taken us a bit of time to train new staff as we sent out 3 churches last year. But there's a real unity, there's a real laughter, there's a real fun. Even This week, Aaron was preaching at staff. And as soon as he stopped preaching, he did a great job. You know, Emmanuel went up to him and just hugged him and said, well done, bro, I'm so proud of you. And everybody was around him. It's taken us real time to get that unity. I think even in the marriage group now, you know, it's such a unified group. We look forward to coming to the marriage group. But it wasn't always a time like that. We had to forge, we had to bring that unity. And yet now I'd be happy to bring any married couple into that group and go, wow, they would be blown away. And then here he ends the letter with a charge to greet the friends in John 15:15 by name. In other words, these were fellow brothers, fellow friends of Jesus, and therefore fellow friends of each other. Imagine how refreshed every disciple would have felt with this letter. You know, somebody who comes in and he deals with a sin that's so obvious in the church. He's calling Gaius his friend. He's taking control or concern over his health. And then talks about, you know, I can't wait to be with you. What an incredible refreshment. You know, how about you? When people walk into the church, do they go, wow, I'm so glad he's here. I'm so glad she's here. Or are you one of those persons that's late? You're selfish. You don't sing. You don't participate. Somebody has to tell you to give. I appreciate young James in our Bible talk. One of the other brothers was on his phone at Bible talk. He went, what are you doing? Get off the phone. You know, this concept of sitting in a Bible talk and getting on your phone, it's selfish. Throw your phone away. I know even in our marriage, no electronics are out in the bedroom. When Kerry and I go to bed at night, we have a prayer and everything like that. No, get your phones out of the bedroom. No personality conflicts. Are you at peace with everybody in your Bible talk? Are you at peace with everybody in your household? Are you at peace with everybody in your sector? Are you at peace with everybody in your church? Are you at peace with everybody that you know around the world? You know, we need to take care of each other. We need to identify the bad and focus on the good. And then we need to understand that great relationships take time, and we need to invest that time. John was known as the apostle of love, but once he was known as the son of thunder, that trigger-happy evangelist in Luke 9:54. You know, he's the one that said, when the disciples James and John saw this, they asked, Lord, do you want us to bring down fire from heaven and destroy them? But Jesus turned and rebuked them. There's young men, he didn't value relationships. He valued judgment. But later on in life, he saw, you know what keeps you faithful is your relationship with God and having great friends around you that will rescue you in those times. Let's see the heart of John in our own relationships. You know, let's take away the frank epistle that is a challenge to us and make a decision today to resolve any relationships that aren't perfectly united and also gain more friends, not only inside the church, but also outside the church. Amen.